Hello everyone, it's Jimmy here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a very exciting review that I really do want to share with you. I am really curious myself. That is, how does the Light Lens Lab A element compare to the Leica 35 Summicron A element, the very original version 1 Summicron? Because I know that the biggest question in our mind is really how it performs in terms of sharpness, rendering, compares to the original in different lighting scenarios, and if it is really a truthful replica. So I'm gonna rearrange the format of the video a little bit. We're first gonna take a look at the comparison shots to answer this question first, and also to save you guys a little bit of time if that's the only part that you're interested in. But I strongly recommend that you stay tuned to the end, because I'm also going to share with you some of the sample photos I've taken in different scenarios with different apertures, because believe me, it does perform drastically differently in different kind of conditions and with different aperture values. And at the end of the video, I'm also going to share with you the fit and finish and handling comparisons. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so in this very first set of photos, I mainly want to show you how it renders in backlit situations, because this is where the characters of the element really shows. And I believe that the first thing that comes to your mind is they are so similar, right? Down to the little artifacts that was created by the flare, they're exactly the same. Also the rainbow flares and whatnot, sharpness-wise, they're also very similar. So in that sense, I am quite a bit surprised how close these two lenses are. And one other thing that I noticed is that in a lot of the reviews and comparisons that you and me both have read online, I think most of them pointed out that the Light Lens Lab A element is a little bit more contrasty than the original Summicron A element, but that is certainly not true here. I think the reason being the test samples in those reviews are probably not as good as the one I got here, because this A element has recently been serviced by Canto Camera and it was a main copy to begin with. So that's why we actually see a little bit of higher contrast in the original Leica A element, right? And also the color is quite a bit more vibrant in the original Leica A element. That is a true surprise to me, because I almost feel like the Light Lens Lab lens looks more like the older lens here, with that little bit extra of, softness and lower contrast wide open, right? But do keep in mind that I take these testing shots maybe, 30, 40 seconds apart, and it's early in the morning, so the sun is constantly changing its position. So maybe that's also contributing to the color differences here. Let's proceed to the next set of photos, which is still outdoors, but it's a little bit less affected by the sunlight. So I think again, the Leica A element just looks a tad more vibrant here, right? Also, it confirms what we saw in the first set of photos is that the rendering of these two lenses are basically identical. So next up, we're going to move to a more controlled environment where we're going to take a look at edge sharpness and as well as how the color differs when we have a controlled 5K color temperature light source. Let's take a look. All right, so as you can see, the colors are much more similar in this set of photos when the light source is controlled. So I think some of the vibrance difference we saw in the first two set of photos are created by one, the fact that there's a lot of sunlight and it's also backlit, especially in the first set of photos. So maybe the coatings may take effect here. And two, it could just be, the position of the sun and the overall warmth of the scene changed or shifted a little bit during that, 30, 40 seconds of time. But I think it's more of the former. Okay, so in terms of edge sharpness, they are pretty much the same. And that is very impressive because in the video I did several weeks back when we compared all the Summicrons Leica have produced, the 8 element is only behind the Apple, right? And also the Voigtlander 35 Ultron. It's actually neck on neck with the ASPH version and better than the 7 and 6 elements. So the light lens lab lens here also shares this, amazing edge and mid-frame sharpness. And moreover, I think if you look at the right side of the frame, the light lens lab at the very, very edge is actually a little bit ahead. So that's impressive. So that's the optical comparisons of these two lenses. And aside from the, vibrance difference, right, where the light lens lab version looks a little bit muted when there's strong lights, they are so similar. I bet you will not be able to tell a difference once you do some post-processing about the color. That's for sure. And that's also based on a very, very important premise, which is your A element has to be pristine, because otherwise, 9 times out of 10, the light lens lab lens is going to outperform the original A element due to aging of the old glass. So that alone makes the light lens lab A element a really, really great purchase for you because it's way cheaper. You're way less likely to get a copy with defective glass because it's just newer, a lot newer. Okay, so let's proceed to the next part of the video, in which I will show you the light lens lab A element that was shot in a lot of different scenarios with different apertures. And do pay attention to the aperture values because it does drastically affect, like I said, the rendering of this lens. Let's take a look. Alright, so as you see here, doesn't matter if it's the light lens lab version of the lens or the original version of the lens, because as we discussed before, their characteristics are exactly the same. You have to be using this lens very carefully, unless the crazy flare is what you want, right? I mean, to be fair, it does bring a little bit of a nostalgic look to your photo, which some of you might actually like. So in that case, do feel free to use it wide open. Personally, I actually prefer the photos taken at f2.8. It's amazingly sharp when just stopped down one stop, which is truly amazing for such an old glass design. And talking about, the more nostalgic filmic look, let's take a look at a couple of photos in which I did a little bit of that post-processing. Let's see how they turn out. Alright, so I do think that the rendering of this lens makes the post-processing part a little bit more easy if you want to achieve that, film-like look, which is, I would probably say, one of the main reasons you would consider this lens. Because otherwise, the 35 Apple is infinitely better in every single way. So, aside from the characters, one other reason you might purchase this lens is because of its build quality. Let's take a look here. Now, if you compare these two lenses and you hold them in your hand, you'll notice that the light lens lab version is considerably heavier and feels much more denser than the Leica version. And that's due to its brass construction. And if you turn the aperture in here, it just feels very, very high-end, for lack of a better word. Just feels really, really good. And also, the focus ring is smooth, but it's not as smooth as Leica. Yeah, there's no comparison here. Once you get your Leica, especially these old lenses, properly serviced, it's buttery smooth. There's almost no resistance, but it's also not loose at all. But in terms of the aperturing, I have to give it to the light lens lab lens, unfortunately, because this just feels a little bit less premium than the light lens lab version, which feels much more well dampened. That's a big surprise, right? So yeah, they're both amazingly built, and for the price, I think the light lens lab easily takes the win here. And that's why I would say, if you enjoy the handling of older Leica lens with their really precise tolerance and really amazing build quality, I think this light lens lab lens will certainly appeal to you. And plus the retro rendering, the very classic Leica rendering that it managed to reproduce, I would say 95 to 99%. I would highly recommend everybody who's interested in these kind of lenses to take a look at the 8-element made by Light Lens Lab. I'll be honest with you guys, I've read a lot of reviews, bad ones, good ones online. I came in with relatively low expectations, but I think I'm truly impressed by this lens. There's nothing more to say about it. I think Light Lens Lab did a really good job here, and its reputation is well earned. Alright, so that's it for today's video. In the next video, we're going to continue this review of Light Lens Lab lenses. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.